Hey there, listener. I'm Fritz McLinden, and this is The State Between Us. I think it's time we had a talk about the WASPs. Not the bzz kind, but, the kind. The kind that has been watching its own decline over the last decades and deciding that it means the whole world is in decline.
There's not a single Western city that's thriving, and they're all degrading in exactly the same way.
The kind that suffered the humiliation of having built America's academic institutions to recreate their own rule, only to be supplanted in those institutions by the motley mix of ethnics dominating scholarship today, deciding, of course, that this means that such institutions are all lying instruments of evil powers.
And we've embraced this, the dumbest religion ever created, scientism.
We have to talk about the kind that believes that the White Anglo-Saxon Protestant is the chosen people of God, and who have decided that their failure to maintain control over the United States is a sure sign of some mystical, maybe even Kabbalistic conspiracy against them.
I want to be a Nazi.
That's right, folks. We are on about these damned white people again, and we're going to kick it all off with fashy man-child and darling of both the new media and old, Tucker Carlson. I envision this as part one in a long-term, on-again, off-again relationship with the revenge of the White Anglo-Saxon Protestant that will include some invasive historicizing of some key moments and networks that signal, well, maybe not the return of the WASP necessarily, but signal that there is a movement out there that sees themselves as returning the WASP to cultural and political hegemony in the United States. Today, as I said, Tucker will be helping us set the table by bringing a lot of these themes together, but in the future, we'll be spending time on the revitalized eugenics movement, the return of the spiritual UFO, and other phenomena associated with this waspy milieu. Let's get into it. I'm doing this episode now because I believe there is some palace intrigue brewing in the Republican Party that might signal the death knell for the State Between Us favorites, the Council for National Policy, at least for a while. If you pay attention to the right-wing media sphere, you will have undoubtedly noticed a sharp turn against Israel recently on the part of the old stalwarts of the space, people like Candace Owens, well, of course, our Tucker Carlson, being very visible examples of that. While at the same time, CNP-affiliated networks like CPAC, Turning Point, etc. have instead doubled down on their support of Israel. The electorate, in general, has turned quite hard against the ethno-state, and neither Democrat nor Republican leadership have welcomed the shift. Both have engaged in blatantly racist Islamophobic attacks against their own anti-Zionists, and both are finding themselves losing space to them bit by bit. As the Republican voter base backslides from Buckley into John Birch again, anti-Zionism has translated very smoothly into anti-Semitism, and like so many in the 1970s, these new Bircherites they've created are hellbound for whomever sets up the next liberty lobby. For those who might be confused by that reference right now, let me put this another way. If, for the new progressive Democrats, the litmus test for supporting someone is asking, is Israel a genocidal state? The test for the new Republican leadership seems to increasingly be, are the Jews controlling America? It's a bizarre and archaic-sounding question, but lucky for them, the WASPs are a bizarrely archaic people. Now, obviously, it's a bit harsh to use Tucker Carlson as the exemplar of any cultural group, and like all cultural groups, WASPs are not anything close to a bound monolith. There are no hard borders between, being it and not being it, and most of them who would identify as WASPs are probably fine and normal people. Obviously, I'm not going to be talking about that side, though. True as it is that WASPs did hippy-dippy stuff like Unitarianism and lead abolitionist sentiments in the U.S., WASPs also gave us chattel slavery. They gave us the KKK, dual seed line theory, colonialism, Project Stargate, and the OG American Legion. Clearly, I'm going to be focusing on that half of that sort of WASP-y division in this series, but we'll need at least some context of the broader cultural picture as well, so let me give you the plan for today's episode. First, I'm going to give a quick and filthy rundown of the White Anglo-Saxon Protestant as a historical subject, as well as look at Tucker's own biography and how it fits into the whole WASP world. In part 2, it's going to be YouTube You Call It, or YouTube I Call It, I guess. We'll start with a peek at Tucker's latest takes on Trump, the Iran war, and the evangelical power bloc in the Republican Party. Then we'll try to grasp Tucker's position on whiteness and his surprisingly quaint but understated Elders of Zion-style takes on the whole JQ. Plus, what does all that mean when you throw spiritual aliens into the mix? That will take us nicely into Tucker's vision of the future and what kind of power will be necessary to order it. And at the end, in part 3, I will be making the case that there is some very waspy mischief afoot in the GOP, how Tucker is positioning himself towards it, and I'll tell you why I think the vice president's already got his foot in the door. And all that in an hour. I hope. Well, let's hop to it then. So since this is a Tucker Carlson episode, I've endeavored to title each section with a rhetorical question, to which you know the true answer is yes. So part 1. Did WASPs control America? White Anglo-Saxon Protestant means a lot of things to a lot of different people, often at the exclusion of each other. But in general, WASP refers to a usually self-identifying lineage of North Americans that trace their ancestry, often with great detail, back to the ancient Germanic inhabitants of the British Isles. A quick aside, I want to say here that Michael Gross's recent book on the subject was a big help for this section, and it's cited in full in the episode description, along with some other helpful references I used, such as Jason Zengerli's recent biography on Tucker Carlson. Waspness in America is exemplified by, but not limited to, the Episcopalian Church, which, for those who don't know, is basically the Church of England in the United States. That said, it's probably more accurate to say that waspness encompasses every American iteration of Anglicanism and its many splintering branches, from the original Plymouth Bay Puritans to Methodists to Quakers, all the way to the British Israelites who built the wacky ultra-racist Christian identity movement, including Wesley Swift, Bill Cameron, and Henry Ford. Over its long history, it came to include less than English family like the Dutch Reformed Church, Belgian Calvinists, French Huguenots like Starfleet Captain Jean-Luc Picard, etc. To be an Episcopalian, however, is really maxing out your waspness. It means that, unlike most of the Anglican splinter churches, yours has a system of bishops, and thus a stronger tie to the original Church of England. Talking about waspness in terms of religion can be misleading, though. We tend to think about religion with the brains of wasps, the brains of those wasps that designed America's scholarly tradition and thought up its disciplinary structures. Because a bunch of 17th century Dutch and English opponents of King Charles wanted their state and their politics to be separate creatures, their success means that we all got taught that religion and politics were in reality separate domains, but this is not really the case, I don't think. Beliefs are not merely really strong opinions that an isolated individual has while floating untethered through their own private cosmic vacuum. Beliefs are networks of believers. They are symbolic shibboleths of group belonging, and since they can only survive through transmission, they are also historical genealogies of real people, with names that can tell you quite a bit about the evolution of power and the composition of the ruling class over time. This is especially so because the beliefs of the ruling class are also material networks of properties, factories, capital, and relationships of exploitation. WASP culture particularly the parts we're focusing on today, were carried by Carnegie, by Rockefeller, by Ford, Morris, Morgan. Without these dense, hereditary webs, the kinds of WASP-identifying beliefs we're going to look at today would struggle to avoid evaporation. Which is why it kind of matters that the vice president just told everyone that he thinks UFOs are demons. But more on that much, much later in the show. So yeah, evaporation. We've talked a bit on The State Between Us already about the height of WASP power at the end of the 19th century and how they envisioned the United States by that time as a test for the American race of conquerors. We didn't really call them WASPs on the show in that episode, but from Lincoln all the way to Roosevelt and straight through to Smedley Butler, the whole story of American empire is also the story of WASP political power. But the threats against that power only multiplied as the empire grew. The conservative core of WASP political and economic networks, when not battling each other, as in the railroad wars between new money steel and old money oil back in the day, they feared an increasingly class, race, and gender-blind vision of democracy growing from one flank, and on the other flank, the emerging class consciousness of the country's proletariat. Despite waging a brutal war against these forces by their own reactionary core class warriors, the WASP elite lost much ground over the coming decades, making liberal compromises to stem a radical reordering of the country. And by the 1960s, they had even ceded the presidency to an actual real-life Catholic, even if they got the absolute waspiest Catholic they could possibly find. When they managed to claw it back again with Nixon, they just blew it, and the whole Episcopalian-ridden CIA, too, over some party bullshit. But there's something about the WASP god that makes him love a loser. And if there's one thing the WASP elite knows how to do, it's fail up. Which brings us to Tucker Carlson. Tucker is not the most obvious candidate to lead the revenge of the ancestry-obsessed WASP elite. His father was an orphan, born in 1941 in the Boston area, and adopted by the upper-middle-class Carlson family as a young child. Richard Carlson was a troublemaker and didn't do great at school, but scored himself an ROTC scholarship to UMiss. He went through a string of interesting jobs before becoming a muckraking journalist in San Francisco in the 1970s. He then became a radio personality for CBS, where he did some disgusting and sadly pioneering transvestigations on local semi-public figures, and spent the rest of his time on an unending bender. When Will Ferrell's Anchorman film came out decades later, Dick Carlson's friends thought that Ron Burgundy had been based on Dick.
It's quite pungent.
Richard Carlson worked briefly as a banker and then tried his hand at city politics, running for mayor of San Diego before finally moving to Washington, D.C. with his second wife. In fact, his second heiress wife, the nouveau riche heiress Patricia Swanson of the Swanson Foods fortune. His first was Lisa McNear Lombardi, heiress of the land empire of Henry Miller, who was once believed to be the largest landowner in the country. Dick climbed the social ladder through these marriages and took Lisa's kids, including our little Tucker, along with him. While Dick was plying his charm in D.C., eventually rising to some minor stardom as the longest-serving director of Voice of America and Reagan's ambassador to the Seychelles, as well as other very obviously, let's say, CIA-adjacent activities, young Tucker and his brother, Buckley, named after you-know-who, were surrounded by male nannies. One worth special note was a Korean intelligence agent he called Colonel Kwan, who taught Tucker how to disembowel a man. All perfectly normal. Listen, I mean, I know that Tucker's dad, Dick Carlson, was never known to be like officially a CIA agent. I mean, you can't find anything really that says that directly, but I mean, literally everything about him just screams CIA. He literally has a KCIA colonel on his house staff, raising his sons. It's incredible. When Tucker came of age, he was promptly shipped off to St. George's Academy in Rhode Island, an Episcopal secondary boarding school that dates back to the 1890s and taught many a WASP elite fail son in its storied history, including the Bush Brats. It was, and I assume remains, the kind of place that ultra-wealthy WASP families sent their kids that couldn't get into Exeter or whatever. It was also a hotbed of grotesque sexual abuse, which was, definitely going on during Tucker's tenure there. The only thing Tucker Carlson ever had to say about it, though, was that he thinks people had been too hard on the leadership of the place and that he himself didn't see anything. There are a couple reasons why he says this, though. First, Tucker was a horrible student, unable to even cross a 2.0 grade average since he spent most of his time, as Dad once did, blasted out of his mind and getting into mischief. He loved the Grateful Dead and being a racist prick on campus, but he didn't love attending class. The second reason that he kind of passes that period off there at the school is that he began to date his classmate and future wife, Susan Andrews, whose father happened to be Reverend George Andrews, the Episcopalian clergyman who ran the academy and who became a second father figure to the precocious Tucker. Like many clergy on the staff at St. George's Academy, Reverend Andrews also found himself quietly shuffled off to Florida sometime later, where he continued to work as rector in their Florida campus. Tucker's prep school look remained a big part of his life, I suppose, since St. George's was where he learned to be a real WASP. An Episcopalian even, or at least how to play one on TV.
Killing is easy.
Before he made the big time, Tucker wanted to be a writer, imagining himself like his hero, Hunter S. Thompson. He attended Trinity College in the 1980s, where he launched a student paper of no real note that combined right-wing politics with Tucker's signature dickishness. While there, he and a school friend and future aide to Scooter Libby, Neil Patel, accompanied his totally not CIA dad, Dick Carlson, on a trip to Nicaragua, ostensibly so his dad could monitor the election of the U.S.-friendly Violeta Chamorro. Tuck wanted to meet some Contra face peelers, but nobody took him seriously. Tucker had let himself go a bit at Trinity, and he was kind of looking like any other deadhead on holiday out there. He became increasingly image-conscious and started dressing more like the Republican Youth for Wallace-looking fash of his prep school time. No doubt on the good graces of his well-connected father and heiress stepmom, Tucker gets a job as a fact-checker for a conservative national journal after dropping out of school in 1991. After a brief stint at another paper, he finds himself a staff writer for the very first issue of Bill Kristol's neocon journal, The Weekly Standard. Despite what Tucker says about that circle now, he had a pretty comfortable gig there and identified increasingly as a neocon himself. The Standard helped him get his shot at TV, and Tucker soon became a sought-after guest for political panel shows until scoring his first full-time television gig as the co-host of The Spin Room on CNN. After which, he took over William F. Buckley's old seat on Crossfire, which by that time had suffered the weight of a few right-wing asses, including Pat Buchanan. Tucker, under his neocon and conservative revolutionary tutelage, looked down on Pat Buchanan, looked down on his paleo-conservative whistlin' Dixie ass, but as the Iraq and Afghan wars pushed on through the early aughts, he turned against his neocon family and began re-examining Buchanan's style of basically Nazi conservatism in a more positive light. At least this is the narrative one tends to hear when Tucker explains his break with, and not to mention his undying hatred of, Bill Kristol. In fact, according to Tucker's recent biographer, Jason Zengerle, whose book is linked in the show description, Tuck was probably mostly angry about being ignored by the hoitiest of the political panel shows of the time, the feeling that Kristol owed him a seat while he continued to fill his panel with old guard conservatives instead, and increasingly distrusted neocons. Tucker had been spurned, you see, by Kristol. But his daddy having run the public broadcasting system of the country at one time, Tucker magically found himself a short-lived place at PBS after losing his Crossfire gig on CNN to Jon Stewart's famous evisceration of it on air. CNN literally felt that Stewart had executed the show on live, and they decided to bury it forever. From PBS, Tucker moved on to MSNBC, and there he essentially made Rachel Maddow's career, whose own show dominated Tucker's until he was out on his ass again. Tucker had made many enemies already in his career as a news and opinion talking head. One of those guys was Roger Ailes, who saw in Tucker the same prep school WASP elite kids that once made his life so difficult as Roger battled his own way into power. He brought Tucker onto Fox to abuse him, and Tucker took it all to keep his spotlight, however dim it was. When Roger Ailes was finally booted from Fox for literally being Jabba the Hutt, Tucker shot up to prime time with Tucker Carlson Tonight, leaving guys like Brit Hume and even the old Irish Bill O'Reilly in his dust. Tucker hadn't given up the print medium, however. In 2010, with the help of his old buddy Neil Patel, who by that time would be comfortably called a true Washington insider for his time in the inner circles of the Bush White House, Tucker co-founded the Daily Caller with the investment of a personal connection of Dick Cheney's. The Caller was named for a local Texas paper that had been the target of one of Patel's failed ops while working for the Bush administration under Scooter Libby. Neil had sent the Corpus Christi Caller, the story of Cheney shooting his buddy in the face with a shotgun, hoping that by doing so, he could control the narrative before it blew up. So they liked that name, Corpus Christi Caller, so they took it, they used it for the Daily Caller. The Daily Caller found itself quickly in competition with Steve Bannon's Breitbart, and Bannon's strategy of flooding the zone with hundreds of on-message stories and littering his front page with variations of the same salacious headlines was crushing Tucker's comparatively more thoughtful Daily Caller. Comparatively. Tucker met this challenge by staffing the Caller with actual neo-Nazis, writers who moonlighted as contributors to Richard Spencer's Radix Journal. While Tucker, in true Episcopalian fashion, denies knowledge of such things as being so far beneath him as to have been invisible, it's quite evident that Tucker himself was getting closer to these wider networks of post-pioneer fun crypto-eugenicists like Tacky's Mag, Steve Saylor, Vdare, etc. And he began to take on the language of noticing and great replacement, sharing these with his Fox viewership as late as 2021. Tucker was first on the scene to support Trump's initial election run, and his own son, also named Buckley of course, is now one of J.D. Vance's closest assistants today. The Carlson family has never sat closer to real power than it does now. And if J.D. has any political ambitions at all, and surely he does, he will need Tucker to grasp them. Now free and independent with his own YouTube show and millions of followers devoted to him and his ideas, and with his stance against Israel and Iran getting him the flowers from the left, Tucker Carlson has never been more dangerous. Before we lay out why that is, I want to put what we just learned about Tucker's life back into the wider context of this WASP revenge thesis here. As I suspect you noticed, Tucker's birth claim to WASP elitehood is tentative at best, but his St. George's schoolboy look and insistence that he's a devout Episcopalian, plus his nonstop references to whiteness, European culture, and Protestantism, as well as his advocacy for an older, far more classical style of American manhood returning to power, all position him as the WASP revanchist for the moment. We've seen this before, many times before. Out elite believing themselves to be avatars of old orders, attaching themselves to the inner circles of really existing power, acting as a dog in their service, and soon enough, having failed to change a thing about the circumstances of their own birth, discover that they're much more disposable than they had wanted to believe. Right now, Tucker's bark is the loudest in the room. He's in what fascists like to call the honeymoon phase, still believing in the romance and myth of the idealized pasts that his WASP and WASP hopeful creators imbued him with. Which takes us to part 2, the clip show. Part 2. Is Tucker driving the WASP bus back to Coeur d'Alene? So, this is why I'm not titling the series The Return of the WASP. Because Tucker, He's no Rockefeller, and neither is his little buddy J.D. Vance. These are fetishists of an old guard that cast themselves historically as the guardians of whiteness. Their strategy has always been to keep one hand on the tap of whiteness in America and parcel it out to people who are willing to play ball. Tucker wants something different than that. He wants to believe in the old WASP myths of eugenics, of nations, destinies, and of a truly ancient pedigree. Tucker wants the old WASP elite to return, but not even he can raise the dead. Instead, what we would get from a hypothetical Tucker-Vance America is the same shit we got from every other fail son who ever saw themselves as avatars of the ancient regime. Cartelization, carceral states, and genocide. And why do I think that? Well, let's start with what romanticized historical fetishes lie underneath his very recent split with this whole CNP-connected dispensationalist evangelical Iran-Contra crowd. If you don't know what I'm talking about, please check out patreon.com/thestatebetweenus for episodes 23, 20, 19, 17. Yeah, quite a few more, actually, come to think of it. Whew, okay. Well, I can't say I'm happy about Tucker's coup against these freaks, but I'll be glad to see them gone if he does pull it off. It'll be nice to talk about something else for a while. Switch gears, maybe. Paleos. Online eugenicists. That kind of thing. Yeah, I did hear myself say that just now, and no, I don't like it. Anyway, here's Tucker from just a few days before this recording. And please recall as you listen that the big change that Tucker is referring to in this clip occurring after World War II in the Protestant power centers is exactly the change in attitude towards Israel from overt anti-Semitic opposition to covert anti-Semitic support. We'll see exactly who is to blame for this soon, but spoiler alert, the answer will not surprise you in any way.
And you're watching the end of whatever American Protestant Christianity, one of the greatest and most positive forces in the history of this world, whatever it became after the Second World War, which is something unrecognizable. The people who built National Cathedral on the highest point in Washington, D.C., one of the most beautiful buildings in the United States, were Episcopalians. They built that cathedral. And it was the nation's cathedral. It was also, above all, a tribute to God. And you can tell by its beauty that it was. And now it's populated by people who share almost nothing in common with the people who built it. And so all of that dies at some point. And we just happen to have the misfortune or the great luck to be living in the middle of the moment where these great institutions and the expectations that come along with them are dying right in front of us right now. And so the death of the unipolar moment and of the institutions within the evangelical movement, American Protestant Christianity, are going away, but they will be replaced by something better and purer, more true to itself, constructive, unifying, healing, institutions that build and don't just destroy. That's going to happen. And God willing, we will live to see it. So rejoice in that, as sad as this is. And happy Easter.
Hey, happy Easter to you too, buddy. Better, purer, more true to itself, you say, huh? That's what's coming. Well, Tuck, let's talk about this purity, huh? Or better yet, let's talk about the nature of that impurity. Yesterday, Tucker had Nathan Opfel come on to help him explain what that is.
Right now, the current institutional church structure is being used as a weapon for ill-gotten gain.
Against God's people.
Against God's people. We're being used. The evangelical church, most Christians are being used to kill children, women. Yeah. And all in the name of this old covenant.
So you're saying the church, and by extension the nation, has been corrupted by a creeping old covenant influence, you say, huh? Gee. Boy, oh boy. Now see, here's the thing. I'm an old dog, and I don't really hear them high-frequency whistles y'all are using there. Can you or your little buddy there put it in a way that even my busted brain can understand?
So how did it wind up becoming not just like this eccentric boutique view, non-Christian view, but it became the dominant position of evangelical, not exclusive. No, they don't all think this. And I think it is changing. But for the past 40 years, it's been the dominant view.
Mm-hmm.
How did that happen?
I think there's a very nefarious, I'm going to call them they right now, behind all of this. And I'm going to go down some called conspiracy theory rabbit holes or whatnot. I think the church, and especially the evangelical church, is being used as a tool for a far greater agenda that most people can't see or fathom at the moment.
I feel that so strongly. I can't see it either, but I feel that. Yeah. It's so obvious. So what is that agenda?
There's a group that wants to retake that promised land. They do believe this book has significant power, and so they want to reclaim it. And they're using dispensationalist arguments to do that.
For the sake of controlling the world.
For the sake of controlling the world, yeah.
I mean, that's just so clearly true.
Okay. I think I get it now. So this dispensationalist evangelical Protestant movement, essentially a tool of secret followers of the old covenant who want to take over the world.
Maybe they're all just reading the protocols the elders designed.
Yeah, I'm sure they're the ones reading the protocols. Okay, Tucker. Well, why don't we let old Tuckaluck here tell us what he does mean in his recent hang with the libertarian and famous fellow traveler, quote unquote, of Nick Fuentes, the self-identifying Jewish comedian Dave Smith. I say comedian, but to be honest, I've never seen him do anything funny. He mostly just seems to do shit like this.
And a lot of this has to do with the Second World War.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So we're reading the wrong lessons into that. And I just want to say for the 100th time, I'm the opposite of pro-Nazi. I'm against authoritarianism in all its forms. I've never heard anybody in my life say Hitler didn't kill a ton of Jews or Hitler loved the Jews. No, Hitler hated the Jews, killed a ton of Jews. That's bad. Everyone agrees with that. It's not really the Holocaust that they're mad about.
When you have something like that, you really got to tell yourself a damn good story about why that is justified. And that's not, when you say this, sometimes people go, oh, so are you saying the Holocaust didn't really happen? It's like, no, it really happened.
It's not about
it really
the
happened.
Holocaust.
The point is that, yes, the point is that the Holocaust happened in a context of 60 million people dying. You know what I mean? Like
it's just so funny. It's all reduced to the, okay, just to be totally clear, not denying the Holocaust. Okay. It's not about that. Yeah. The immediate post-war changes that you just listed, the deindustrialization of the West, the partition of India, the creation of the national security state, if I could say, an authoritarian national security state in the West, delivering half of Europe to the Soviets, the partition of Germany, like these are all the genocide of German civilians after the war.
Mass ethnic cleansing, mass rapes and murders, and all types of horrible stuff.
So it's not a defense of Hitler, whom I oppose, to say all of those are bad. Yeah. It's just kind of interesting that this war, which was supposedly so great, gave birth to things that are just objectively the worst things.
Yeah, and
what is that?
Well, why is that? What is that? All right. So I think it probably goes without saying for this audience, but literally no one has ever said that the Second World War happened because of the Holocaust, nor has anyone ever said that the Holocaust constituted the majority casualty count of the war. So what are they saying then when they say we took the wrong lessons from the Second World War? Why repeatedly claim that the Holocaust takes up too much space in our historical memory? Why is that? Well, so this is a reference to what, it's got many names, and sometimes it doesn't have any names, but it's a reference to what Jew-hating fascists like Bishop Richard Williamson, whom Tucker would love if he doesn't already know him, what guys like that sometimes call Holocaustianity. The idea that a religion-like narrative covers the entire Western world and serves mostly to undermine the one true religion, white Christianity, as well as undermine the heroic rebirth of European nations.
Is it possible that what you're watching is a very stealthy yet incredibly effective attack on what, from a Christian perspective, is the true faith, belief in Jesus? Is that what really is under attack here? Maybe that's what's been under attack for a long time, maybe our whole lifetime, Maybe almost everything we see is an attack on that faith, the one faith that is always attacked, always and everywhere for 2,000 years. It's one. Many faiths have been attacked. Many religious people of different religions have been killed over the past 2,000 years. But there's been only one sustained effort to exterminate a faith, and that's the Christian faith. Could that be part of it?
Who could possibly have been around long enough? What group of people could he be referring to that would have been around long enough to run a sustained attack against Christianity for 2,000 straight years? Now, I do think Tucker is a bit outside of the classical European anti-Semitism model, though. Like Henry Ford, he goes well beyond the fear of the itinerant foreigner or the Judeo-Bolshevik conspiracy, or even the Elders of Zion fantasy, although as you can see, he can certainly, vibe with those as well. Tucker seems to have tapped a much weirder branch of the Episcopalian family tree here, in reference to the so-called Jewish question. Before I give away the ghost, I need you to know that Tucker definitely thinks that the Jewish cabal that is controlling Protestant leadership is not doing so through conventional political means.
Jeff Sachs, who's often attacked, Jeff Sachs is really smart, and I think
Very
Jeff Sachs
smart.
is a decent guy, and we don't agree on everything, but he's an honest guy. He just says, so I say to him, you've been watching this all these years. What do you think this is about? Why does this tiny country have so much control over our giant continent-sized country? And he said, well, a lot of contributions. There are threats or questions about the Kennedy assassination. They're willing to use force in assassinations to get what they want. He goes, but I don't think that explains it. I don't think either one of those, bribery or threats, a carrot or stick, I don't think that actually is the whole picture. There's a spell of some kind. There's a supernatural quality to this. Good people, I don't think Mike Huckabee is in favor of genocide. I just don't think that. Pretty nice guy, very nice guy actually. But he believes with this fervor that suggests that he's not thinking clearly. There's another quality here. And do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, no, 100%.
And
Okay, so we got magic Jews using good old American Protestants against good old American Protestants to somehow control the world. Anything else they're coming at you with there, fella?
a lot of the same people who are upset about the rise in anti-Semitism, which again, I think is real. I mean, I can tell it's real, and I don't like it either, are the ones who abetted all the anti-white hate for so long, which is still not being addressed. The Trump administration sued Harvard over its anti-Jewish discrimination, which is like, it's deranged.
What a
actually.
slap in the face to white people.
Well, it's
man.
unbelievable.
Oh my God.
And of course, the anti-white hate is still totally embedded at every level of our government and in business, and most famously in schools. So that's like an attempt to hurt people on the basis of their race.
Yep. So the same people, so that same magical group of old Covenanters, they're coming after the whites directly. What a slap in the face, people. What a slap in the face. No? Aren't you mad? Isn't that just a slap in the face to fucking white people? Oh my God. Okay. Well, lovely. While we're on the subject of magical spiritual warfare, there's something else that Tuckaduck wants us to know.
Well, I mean, we know beyond question that there are objects and phenomena, aerial and undersea, that can't be explained by science and that seem to defy the laws, will measurably defy the laws of physics, and that are not experimental aircraft created by DARPA or the DoD or by the Russians or the Chinese. Like, we know that. There have been many testimonies to this effect under oath in the Congress in the last 2 years. So, like, that's not even a question. Are they real? Yeah, well, obviously they're real. What are they is the question. And I've been down the rabbit hole on this, and just because of my job, I've never done really a story on this because I came to a hard and fast conclusion on it, which I can't prove, but I sincerely believe it, which is that these are spiritual phenomena, obviously. They've been here forever. There's a lot of evidence of that in the written record going back thousands
What do you
of
mean?
years. They're angels and demons, of course.
Yeah, of course. So I'm wondering right now how many longtime listeners of mine are anticipating where I'm about to take our magic school bus here. You got Jews with demonic magic. You got aliens as spiritual phenomena. Are you with me? Maybe this will help you.
The number of objects in the sky are increasing, and the constant awareness of the traffic through the universe of objects that are moving of gigantic size and movement being maneuvered just as skillfully and handled with the operation of maneuver as a modern aircraft would be in Earth's atmosphere. When I tell you that not only have we had such craft, and we could tell you to go back and read the book of Ezekiel, and how Ezekiel was permitted when he was out on the plain, behold these vast fleets of circling objects that came in formation. When they took a throne out of them, in one of these flagships was the throne of the Most High God.
That's right, listener. I am sorry to say that my current thinking is that Tucker Carlson is in some way Christian identity bound, at least in some form, in some like newish super Episcopalian form, and is starting to sound increasingly like fellow Episcopalian, whom you've just heard there, Wesley Swift. For those who are new here, Christian identity bases itself on something called the serpent seedline theory, also invented by radicalized Episcopalians, which posits that the seed of Adam begat man, while the seed of Cain gave rise to the shape-shifting reptilians that, people call the Jews. At times, in the Christian identity mythos, the races of Earth are presented as literally having come from the stars, but always the White Anglo race, the true son of Israel, is in a cosmic struggle with good and evil for its own survival. Magic Jews conspire against the chosen people, while spiritual forces wage battle in the skies and under the seas in the form of UFOs. It's a super fun little thing they've got going on over there sci-fi wise, but also incredibly racist. Christian identity had over time moved away from the sort of UFO angle. It was really dominant in the 50s and 60s, but took a back seat over time. But it's still it's still there. Christian identity is not self-contained, but bleeds into and cross-pollinates with many U.S. evangelical strains, almost all of which derive from the white Anglo-American churches of the colonial period. Christian identity itself was extruded from the larger British Israelite movement, which by the 19th century was said to have almost entirely dominated the Anglican faith back in the motherland. In short, British Israelism offers a founding myth for the White Anglo-Saxon Protestants as one of the lost tribes of Israel. And for many, the United States was very literally Zion, the true Israel promised to the chosen people in the Bible. It belonged to them. The North American British Israelists split, of course, over the Jewish question. The West Coast crew thought that the Jews weren't even one of the tribes of Israel at all, hence the serpent seed line, while the East Coast WASP elites decided to try to accept the Jews as one of the lost tribes of Israel, while the British being another. The East Coasters have been supporting for like 2 centuries or something that argument with this very simple biblical gotcha. Jews, you see, are named after Judah. Judah was only one of the tribes of Israel, so where are the rest? Well, maybe the tribe of Dan ended up founding Dansmark. Denmark. This is really what they said. Maybe Reuben went to France and became French. He started the French people. Huh? Maybe Naphtali went to Sweden and started the Swedish people. In fact, maybe all of Europe's modern nations are really just some tribe of Israel in exile. And the English? Why, thanks for asking. They, of course, come from the tribe of Ephraim. But what of the Americans? Surely the American race, as discussed in episode 15, has earned itself a lost tribe of its own, no? Well, that tribe is Manasseh. So this next clip is by no means a smoking gun, but if you know what to listen for, I think you might detect, especially in some of the crosstalk in the middle there, as I think I detected, the specter of British Israelism haunting Tucker's recent conversation with Nathan Opfel, being about as blunt as a guy can be.
I would say,
what is going on?
I would say most Christians, especially dispensationalist or Zionist Christians, are Talmudic Jews wrapped in Christianity.
What does that mean?
Okay. So, where should we start? Should we start? Can I start in the Bible? Because I want to lean on scripture here. So, you have Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Jacob becomes Israel. Israel has 12 sons. Those are the 12 patriarchs.
Right.
Ironically, the word Jew, do you know what it means?
It comes from Judah.
Of Judah.
Right.
So who
Which
are the
is
11?
One of 12 tribes.
Yeah, who are the 11? There's so many muddled terms here that's so ironic to me.
I mean, if it wasn't for Tucker's belief in spiritual UFOs and seeming to think that Jews have unnatural magic, I wouldn't have thought twice about that little snippet there, but all my alarms are screaming with this guy. Like, these symbols all webbed together somehow. Then as British Israelism turned into Christian identity in the first half of the 20th century, it did so on the heels of the militia movement. One of the original far-right militias in America, the California Rangers, was led by Christian identity UFO weirdo and Wesley Swift's closest comrade and student, William Potter Gale, who was also an Episcopalian minister. Tucker seems to be following in some well-worn footsteps here. Check out this excerpt from his talk with WASP eugenicist, and I guess former Nazi Satanist probably turned normie Republican policy nerd, Steve Saylor, whose ultra-low-key white nationalism takes the form of economic isolationism, anti-imperialism, ethnic cleansing, and so-called race realism, for which he coined the weasel word noticing to talk about. He's this kind of guy that idiots like Sagar and Getty and Tucker are directly downstream of. So with the knowledge that Christian identity and white militias tend to go together, I think this hits a little different.
So, I don't know. I mean, have you been seeing this just over the last 10 years? Just huge increases and putting down white people.
Have I noticed it?
Yeah.
It's one of the defining facts of American society, and it's always perpetrated by people who are simultaneously, in the same sentence, giving you a lecture about racism.
Yes.
Shut up, white man, you're evil for being white and racist. Huh? It's like, there's so many, like, the contradictions in that sentence are so inherent that it's hard to believe anyone could utter it. But no, of course I noticed that. And I guess what I'm really struck by, and I don't know the answer, is why people put up with it. So at that point, it's like, well, like if you're attacking my children for their skin color, then I get my gun, right? But nobody does get his gun. They just sort of sit there and, can't say anything. Like, why? Why would anyone ever put up with that? But why is that? I mean, clearly something is
polite.
broken inside, right? I mean, like, why would you put up with an attack that's inherently unreasonable, right? You don't choose your race, therefore you probably shouldn't attack someone on the basis of his race. It's totally anti-American as defined by consensus over the last 60 years. That's one thing we're not allowed to do, and yet it's done at greater scale now than during the Jim Crow period. So, like, why would you even consider putting up with that? There must be something wrong with you. Like, you hate yourself, obviously.
I mean, this is Ed Turner shit. This is Tucker. This is the Tucker Diaries here. I mean, he's literally just there calling white people cucks for not shooting at hordes of other races coming to replace them and violate their families or whatever. This is about as close to direct incitement as you're going to get out of this slippery little prep school salamander, but it's fucking there. It's definitely there. Christian identity is one of those your race is your religion kind of, post-war Nazi things. People who follow it believe that their religion that's not a religion is under attack from other religions that aren't religions, like the aforementioned Holocaustianity, for example. Communism, in their mind, is a religion. Secularism is a religion. Scientism is a religion. And then here's another one for you.
Anti-racism, being against racism, is our state religion. So, I mean, how paradoxical that in a country where the one thing you can't be is racist, that anti-white racism is enshrined in law, custom, and culture, and no one mentions it.
So ask yourself then, what about anti-racism for Tucker could possibly have a religious character, unless you assumed that race itself was a religious subject? It's not looking good. Tucker finally tells us what comes after the American imperial moment. That we're ending here in a recent Easter address.
And what that really means is the unipolar moment is over. Now, it's been over for a while, and it's not the end of American power or prosperity. It might, in fact, be the beginning of actual power and more durable prosperity, the kind rooted in resources and production, the kind that's not necessarily dependent on finance.
Finance. The bad capitalism, the one that's bad for reasons. There's just something so, I don't know, what would you say, rootless about it, I guess? Maybe a little cosmopolitan? I just can't put my finger on it. So with the financiers out of the picture, what are we looking at here, Herr Tucker?
Power is the ability not to create chaos or destruction, but to restore order. Power is the ability to restore order. The most powerful person, the most powerful force, is the one that restores conditions to order. You'll know who's in charge by who settles the conflict. The person or nation that restores order is dad. That's who's in charge. That's the head of household. That's the head of the world.
Dad. Dad's coming. Oh, God.
And when dad gets home, you know what he says? You've been a bad girl. You've been a bad little girl, and you're getting a vigorous spanking right now.
And what's Dad going to do when he comes out of the chaos of a fallen U.S. empire to create order? Perhaps in some Kaiserian way, maybe. If you're feeling a bit Spanglery. Wait a minute. We got Spangler. We got the apocalypse with the return of a vengeful dad type. Is Tucker Vindex? Maybe. While we're on the old Pathe Mathos Vindex train, I'd also like to point out, while I'm setting up this last clip, is that one of the dumbest and most harmful things to tumble out of the post-Episcopalian Christian identity movement that Tucker seems to be sniffing around is the former leading chapter of the Order of Nine Angles in the U.S., the Temple of Blood, whose Christian identity-raised leader, the FBI snitch Joshua Caleb Sutter, authored the post-apocalyptic sci-fi fash-fic garbage book Iron Gates, celebrating the rise of a brutal police and intelligence state rising out of the ashes of the fallen American hegemon. I'm not saying Tucker's doing a Sutter and Hoy thing here. He's not. But maybe he's not as far away from that kind of thing as I would like him to be.
But we're going to need a police state to protect ourselves from the blowback of this war.
I mean, that's a real concern.
That's the problem.
Yeah, that's a real concern.
We're so vulnerable. I mean, this country's wide open. And all of our infrastructure, our energy infrastructure, our food, our water, all of it's unguarded. And the only way to protect ourselves from the inevitable blowback, the Shia terrorism we're going to get, of course, after killing the Ayatollah, is going to be to turn this into a surveillance state even more than it is.
Part 3. Do Tucker and J.D. Vance have something horrible in the works? Question mark. So, the vice president got on camera the other day and had this little tete-a-tete with one of his spineless press worms, and if you missed it in the ever-accelerating news cycle, this is how it went.
Okay. All right. Well, we're waiting for it. We saw aliens.gov.
You know me.
We saw aliens.gov.
I don't think they're aliens. I think they're demons anyway, but that's a longer discussion.
Well, I can't let you go.
Well, look, I think that celestial beings who fly around, who do weird things to people, I think that the desire to describe everything celestial, everything as otherworldly, to describe it as aliens, I mean, every great world religion, including Christianity, the one that I believe in, has understood that there are weird things out there, and there are things that are very difficult to explain. And so if another person sees an alien, maybe I see an angel or a demon. So I'm a big believer that there are like spiritual forces working on the physical world that a lot of us don't see and a lot of us don't understand and a lot of us don't appreciate. But, you know, is it aliens or is it our guardian angel, or is it aliens, or is it a not so guardian force that doesn't care about us, or in fact actively wishes us harm?
This little offhand statement comes on the heels of his latest book release, which is ostensibly about his conversion to Catholicism, but features on its cover a Methodist church, and all at a time when the Pope seems to openly hate JD's guts as he makes overtures to Groypers, etc. There has long been a place for a certain kind of Catholic in Episcopalian circles. I mean, apart from the Huguenots, you got your Anglo-Catholics, your Old Catholics, I'm assuming plenty of others. And I don't know if JD Vance sees himself in the most likely Anglo-Catholic circles or not, but it doesn't hurt if you're trying to signal to your WASP revanchist friends that you're cool by smacking one of their churches on the cover of your Catholic book, does it? But I'm kind of burying the lead there. JD Vance signals that he believes that UFOs are spiritual entities, strongly implying that good old cosmic struggle between powers beyond our scientific grasp. I don't think JD Vance actually believes in anything at all, if I'm being honest, but this attaches him to a whole lineage of WASP weirdos and errant Episcopalians with historical connections all up and down the U.S. military, nobility, intelligence services, especially Air Force intelligence, and the CIA. This spiritual UFO topic is one I really like talking about, and we're gonna talk about it probably in the next edition of Revenge of the WASP, but if you're hearing all of this for the first time, just lock it away for now and stay tuned to the show. More importantly, this aligns himself very tightly with Tucker, with whom JD's developed a very close relationship over the years. I mentioned already that Tuck's son, Buckley Carlson, works closely with JD as well. Well, if they're doing the old Mott and Bailey, the old foil and pointy bit routine that Tucker had perfected over the years, I suspect we'll see Tucker take on the work of severing his own massive base of followers from the evangelical CNP web by effectively repeating what the Liberty Lobby did to John Birch Society back in the day, arguing that the latter wasn't nearly anti-Semitic enough. When Willis Carto and William Luther Pierce tried this back in the day, it led to an explosion of neo-Nazi organizations in America and outright terrorist acts for decades, while their more conservative and pro-Israel foil, the John Birch Society, got eaten alive from all sides, left, right, and liberal. And I think this is happening again now, but this time, it's as if Liberty Lobby occurred during the Wallace presidency. What I mean is that JD is in power, and the presumed heir of the MAGA movement. Tucker is out there in the Bailey doing the dirty work, while JD keeps his hands clean up in the Mott. Tucker goes for the king, JD waits in the wing. Tucker slaps your face, JD grabs your french fries. You get the picture. At any rate, should they succeed in shifting the base away from the CNP types and into a new era of oil-backed Liberty Lobby-style fascism, I think things could get pretty bad. Maybe even worse than they were at the height of the underground American fascist movement in the 80s, and we should expect to see Tucker and Vance ushering in a pretty horrible new normal. In future episodes of Revenge of the WASP, we're going to get a lot deeper into this whole aliens and demons history of WASP power and return to some work I did a long time ago on a show far, far away. I'm really looking forward to dusting that stuff off and seeing how things have progressed since then, and we'll also have to do an episode on the Post-Pioneer Fund Network and how they also fetishize a moment in WASP history, LARPing as the fin de cycle scientists and jerking each other off all the way to the White House. But until then, please share this episode with anyone you know who has developed a soft spot for Tucker lately or is framing their correct opposition to Israel or Trump in Tucker's terms. He's not, quote, coming around. He's not, quote, speaking truth to power. He's speaking the old lies of old powers in a new modern vernacular. Back before World War II, we had a word for those kinds of people. It starts with an F, and it ends with an ashist. All right, folks, see you next time on The State Between Us. If you liked this episode, join us on patreon.com/thestatebetweenus for free to stay up to date with the latest free episodes and check out the membership tiers and premium content and whatnot, and maybe support me and my work and sign up to one. I personally would love that. Please share this and other TSBU episodes far and wide, and feel free to reach out to me on Blue Sky, Instagram, Twitter, and all that kind of thing. All right, later.